Hi, I'm Joe Graydon.
I'm Terry Graydon. Welcome to this podcast of the People's Pharmacy, where we bring you the stories behind the health headlines.
This podcast is brought to you by Redix Industries, makers of Utterly Smooth Body Cream. 800-345-7339, on the web at uttercream.com. Have you ever had a hard time getting motivated to complete a project on time or go to the gym? What do you want out of life? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
Motivation is at the heart of everything we do as humans. It influences our work performance, our relationships with our children, and our retirement plans. How well do we really understand our motivations?
Dr. Dan Ariely is a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. He's the founder and director of the Center for Advanced Hindsight. He'll share secrets in his new book, Payoff, the hidden logic that shapes our motivations.
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, we welcome your questions and stories about motivation.
First, this news.
In the People's Pharmacy health headlines, people who experience a sudden drop in blood pressure when they stand up may be at greater risk for dementia later in life. That's the finding from a new study presented at the Epi Lifestyle Scientific Sessions of the American Heart Association. Researchers collected data from more than 11,000 middle-aged volunteers beginning in 1987. The investigators were especially interested in people who had orthostatic hypotension. This is a condition in which standing up leads to a rapid fall in systolic blood pressure, 20 points or more. It's often accompanied by dizziness. Subjects who were found to have orthostatic hypotension when they enrolled in the trial were at 40% greater risk for dementia later in life. The volunteers were followed for at least 20 years. The authors acknowledged that this is an association rather than a cause and effect of dementia. That said, they pointed out that a sudden drop in blood pressure that leads to dizziness might be linked to diminished blood flow to the brain. Although the effect is temporary, it could conceivably have lasting negative consequences for cognitive function.
This is not the first time low blood pressure has been linked to cognitive decline. A study published in JAMA Internal Medicine in 2015 reported on 172 elderly Italian patients attending memory clinics. Those with systolic blood pressure below 128 appeared to have greater cognitive impairment. More recently, a study in the journal Alzheimer's and Dementia tracked very old members of a California retirement community. Those who developed hypertension in their 80s were 42% less likely to experience dementia in their 90s. The new studies suggest that blood pressure management may be more complicated than we previously imagined.
In an update to an old dietary guideline, experts from the American Heart Association are now recommending that patients with heart failure and coronary heart disease take omega-3 fatty acids in the form of supplements. The prior guidance from the AHA dated back to 2002. It was to consume 1 gram of EPA and DHA daily in the form of oily fish. If that was hard for some people, the American Heart Association recommended fish oil supplements, but only in consultation with a physician. Now, after reviewing additional data from randomized clinical trials, the AHA has determined that omega-3 fatty acids from supplements reduce the risk of death in patients with coronary heart disease as well as heart failure.
Men who take certain medications for prostate enlargement may experience an unpleasant and potentially long-lasting side effect, persistent erectile dysfunction. The drugs in question are finasterides, sold under the brand name Proscar, and dutasteride, sold as Avodart. These medications block the conversion of testosterone to dihydrotestosterone, or DHT for short. The drugs shrink the prostate and make it easier to urinate. Finasteride is also sold as Propecia in a lower dose to reduce hair loss. The new study involved nearly 12,000 men between 16 and 89. Just over 1% of them developed long-lasting erectile dysfunction even after stopping the drugs. Men under the age of 42 who took finasteride or dutasteride for more than 200 days were nearly 5 times more likely to report persistent erectile dysfunction than men who took the drugs for shorter periods of time.
Does testosterone treatment increase a man's risk of heart attack, stroke, or other cardiovascular calamity? This male hormone has been promoted as a way to counteract loss of libido and muscle strength with age. But safety questions have been raised, and the FDA has put a warning on this drug. Several studies have given conflicting answers to the safety question. Now a meta-analysis has been conducted on 30 randomized controlled trials. In addition to heart attack, stroke, and death, the investigators analyzed the data to see if there were links to heart failure, arrhythmia, or hospitalization for cardiac procedures. They bemoaned the poor quality of the data, but found no significant association between testosterone and cardiovascular complications. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon. I'm a pharmacologist.
I'm Terry Graydon. I'm a medical anthropologist. Today we'll be talking about motivation. What gets us to do the things we do, and why do we avoid doing other things? We'll find out by talking with Dr. Dan Ariely. He's the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. He's a founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight and the author of several New York Times best-selling books. Predictably Irrational, The Upside of Irrationality, and The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. His latest book is Payoff, The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. Dan Ariely.
Lovely to be back. It's been too long.
It's wonderful to have you in our studio today. You know, motivation, it's at the heart of everything we do as humans. Food, shelter, work, play, retirement. From cradle to grave, it's all about motivation. So, Dan, what motivated you to write about motivation?
So actually, it's an interesting thing. You know, usually when I write about research. And here I started writing about my own struggles to try to understand motivation. And I'll tell you a story that is not in the book. Maybe 2 years ago, I get a phone call, a quick email. And, you know, because I was badly injured many years ago and because I wrote about my injury in an open way, lots of people who get injured write me. And what they want to talk about is life after the injury. Like when you get injured, you see what you lost, you don't see what you gain. Anyway, I get this quick email, say, please call me. I call this guy at night. It turns out he was a PhD student, jumped into the ocean, shallow water, broke his neck. He's a quadriplegic. And this was a year after his initial injury. And he realized that he's not going to get better. And he wanted to talk about what can he do moving forward. And we tried to figure out, like, where can he find happiness, right? Where can he find motivation, things that would get him. And we talked for a while, and he said how much he hated all these books that said that the injury was the best thing that ever happened. And we agreed that it's a good thing to write a book against those books and, you know, give a different perspective. He also had an uncle who needed some help with some algorithms for his startup, and we agreed he was going to work on both of those, and we created like a timeline and when in the day and so on. And then he asked me, what do I think about committing suicide? And, you know, I told him I'm not against it. At some point it might be reasonable to consider, but I said right now we just came with 2 plans. Let's try those. And for the next 4 months, we talked about once a week, and he made some progress, and I gave him some feedback, particularly on the book side. And then 4 months later, he did commit suicide. And I started wondering, like, what gets some people to give up and some people not? So I started spending some time with people with difficult injuries over the last two years. I spend a day, and one of the lessons from this was that successful injured people or successful people with very difficult situations change the focus of their motivation from the meaning of life to making things today. So, for example, another guy who is a quadriplegic, he got injured on a bicycle accident, basically asked his caretaker to lay his clothes on the floor, and he wiggles himself into his clothes. He has a stick, and he moves it under his armpit, and he kind of gets himself into his clothes, and it takes him about 45 minutes. And he times himself, and when he makes it below 45 minutes, he's happy, and when it takes him longer, he basically took kind of, life is about small achievements. So that's kind of one lesson of motivation. But going back to the question, you asked me, like, what motivates me, and I spend a lot of my time on things like that. We have projects in Africa. I meet lots of people with disabilities, and when you look at it, you say it's kind of miserable, and I find myself putting myself into situations that make me cry and suffer and painful. And this book started from me wondering, why do I put myself into this situation? We have this notion of saying pursuing happiness. This is not happiness. This is something very, very different. Nevertheless, I find myself drawn to this situation. I don't think because I enjoy pain. I think it's because we have kind of the wrong definition of happiness on the right to pursue happiness. When people hear the right to pursue happiness, they say, oh, I have the right to, I should sit on the beach somewhere and drink mojito or watch Seinfeld or something like this. But I think that real happiness is not about short term. It's not about like daily happiness that you have at the end of the day. It's the happiness that comes from achievement and overcoming and helping other people and contributing and so in many ways. And it actually is not consistent with momentary happiness. So if you think about running a marathon, if you came from outer space and you watched people running a marathon and you could see their brain, you would say, my goodness, these people did something terrible to society. Society is now punishing them in this terrible way. They're really suffering. Hopefully all of these people are watching them being, paying for their crimes, and hopefully society will forgive them at the end. A lot of the things that are worthwhile are actually not accompanied by momentary happiness. And I started with this dilemma of what really gives us fulfillment. And at the end of contemplation and some experiments and so on, I think the conclusion is quite clear. If we pursue the momentary happiness, we would have daily happiness, but kind of empty lives. Right? How many at the end of the end of the year you would not reflect back and say, "Oh my goodness, I got to sit on the sofa for 251 days." But if we look back and say, I managed to overcome this challenge, help these people, and so on, that's a very, very different story and very different meaning of what motivates us.
You're listening to Dr. Dan Ariely. His latest book is Payoff: The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. If you'd like to join our conversation, give us a call at 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or reach us via Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy. If you have a question about how to get people to do things, including your children or your partner, you can ask Dan Ariely. We'd love to hear your story. Again, the number, 888-472-3366.
Dan, I'm wondering, what exactly is motivation? We've been talking about what is happiness. Motivation is another sort of big abstract word. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so I think of it as like a force. I think about in physics, you have a force like gravity that propels us toward one direction. I think motivation is one of those. It's an overall definition of a force that gets us to act. And the thing about motivation is that it comes from many, many different types of sources. So at the workplace, we often think that motivation is about money. And if we can just re-engineer bonuses or salaries, or people would care for promotion and so on, that's what motivates people. But the reality is that motivation has so many components in it, right? If we wrote an equation when we say M, motivation equals, money will be in there, but it will be a sense of accomplishment, achievement, care about other people. It will be about a sense of progress, a sense of meaning, a sense of connection to other people. So it will have all of these elements. And the thing about it is that it's one of the, I think, very few things in the universe where it's like the perpetual motion machine. You know, in physics, people are looking for this energy machine that just work on itself and just produces endless energy. And motivation is like that. Imagine two organizations, universities, factories, whatever it is. In one of them, people are happy and motivated, in the other one, they're not. In the place where they're not, people are miserable and productivity is low. In the place where happy, everybody wins. People are happier and productivity is high. Every time we take an organization or ourselves and we decrease motivation, everything loses, right? There's just less of everything. It's not like a regular zero-sum game that you say if one person wins, the other person loses. No. If you get to go to a workplace that you're happy and motivated, everybody gets more.
Well, I love to read Dilbert. It's one of my favorite comic strips. And sort of Dilbert represents the opposite of motivation. Yeah. And, clearly this has been a very successful strip for decades now. Yeah. Because so many people can relate to that feeling of de-incentivification. Yeah. So how is it that so many businesses seem to get it wrong?
Yeah. So I think we have this Adam Smith efficiency logic, right? So we all remember like Charlie Chaplin modern days, right? And this was based on Adam Smith's notion of efficiency, and he gave this very famous example of a pin factory. He said, okay, there's a pin factory. If one person make the 12 steps to make a pin, take a metal, breaks it, stretches it, and so on, that person doesn't produce as much. If you have 12 people, each of them doing 1 steps of the pin, and each of them gets specialized, they do much more than 12 people working alone. There's a kind of efficiency of this. And this production line was incredibly important in the industrial age, and we really increased productivity a lot because it's true. If you specialize in one little thing, you could do much, much more of it. The problem is we've taken that metaphor too far. And I think the cubicle culture is that. If you think about the cubicle culture, it's kind of amazing. You put people and you tell them you're disposable. In fact, I'm not even putting your name in anything more than like a Velcro, or I need to just move something around. There's a health company that tells people so much that they're terrible that they don't even give them their own cubicles. Every morning you come and you pick your own cubicle. What is more disposable than that?
Oh, exactly.
That
sounds dreadful.
De-incentivizing. Well, we are going to take a short break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Dilbert effect. How often do companies actually undermine motivation rather than improving it?
And you can share your story or ask a question. Our lines are open, 888-472-3366. You can send an email. We're radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or you can reach us through Twitter @peoplespharmacy.
That number again, 888-472-3366. You can ask Ariely on the People's Pharmacy today.
You're listening to the People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
If you like the information you hear when you listen to the People's Pharmacy, you may also enjoy our book published by National Geographic. It's the People's Pharmacy Quick and Handy Home Remedies, available online at peoplespharmacy.com or at your favorite bookstore.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Red-X Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions that moisturize deeply to make dry skin feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339. The website is uttercream.com.
And if you would like to purchase a CD of this show, you can call 732-2334. It's show number 1072. You can also find it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
Today in the People's Pharmacy, we're talking about the mysteries of motivation. Whether we're parents, teachers, employers, employees, doctors, or patients, we're all trying to get something or someone to be better. Will understanding how motivation works help us make better choices? We invite you to ask a question or share your story about motivating your own self or someone else. The number is 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. Ask a question of our expert, Dr. Dan Ariely.
Well, we are talking with Dr. Dan Ariely. He is the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. He's a founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight and the author of a number of books: Predictably Irrational, The Upside of Irrationality, and The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. His latest book, and the one we're talking about, is Payoff, The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. You can send him questions with Twitter. He's at Dan Ariely with the hashtag Ask Ariely. But today you have a chance to ask Dan Ariely right now and here on the People's Pharmacy, 888-472-3366, or send us an email, radio@peoplespharmacy.com.
And we should say you spell Ariely, Ariely. Dan, I do have a question about one of your newest projects because it has to do with health, which isn't to say that motivation doesn't have everything to do with health and just about everything that's important to us. But it's this idea of removing apps from your phone. Would you describe this? It's brilliant.
Now, you say you're going to do a clinical trial with this soon.
Yes. So here's the thing. And you know, you're experts on this field, but my view of compliance is that compliance is almost never happy on that day. It's always something for the long term at the cost of today, right? There are very few medications that feel like chocolate.
And we should explain that compliance is a big word that doctors use a lot, which means the patient is doing what he or she is supposed to do.
Yeah. So, you know, eating well, exercising, taking medication, all of those things are kind of sacrifices in today for the long term. And the reality is that we're not good at this. Right?
No, we're not.
We overeat, undersave, procrastinate, text and drive. I mean, you name it, right?
We are human beings.
We're human beings. And we care about the moment rather than the later. So the thought here was that the incentive structure is wrong. You need to do something painful now, or unpleasant now, or slightly unpleasant even, for something good in the future. Maybe. And we're not good at this. So we said, how can we reverse the situation? How do I make it so that every day that you're not compliant, that you're not eating well, exercising, and so on, will be more miserable? So we have this little app, and there's a turtle, and it's like a Tamagotchi. You remember those things? And the turtle is happy when you take your medication, exercise, eat well, and it gets a little sad as you don't. But the important thing is every time as the turtle gets sad, it deletes other apps from your phone. Now, it doesn't delete our app. Our app is always on the phone. It deletes Facebook, Twitter, music, and so on. And the idea is that basically you get to lose something now, right? So if you say, people who are on some medication get to lose a lot in the future. Really a lot if they don't take the medication. But because it's in the future, it's not motivating. How do we get them to lose something small, but now, and will that work better? So we have two versions of this that we're going to try. One is in the loss aversion domain, when people are going to lose. One is in the gain. So people would wake up, and half the people would have all their apps on the phone when they wake up. And if they misbehave or don't do things according to what they've agreed with the doctor, they would lose their apps for the day. Right, it will come back tomorrow. And the other one is people start with 0 apps and they get to earn their apps as they behave well.
So as they take their medicine, do their exercises.
That's right. And we've done a small pilot at the university with exercise, and we gave students a very badly tasting concoction to kind of simulate a medication. It worked very well. So we're going to start a trial with people with heart failure. right? Those are individuals who, when they leave the hospital, they have really all the good intentions in the world. But then those intentions collide with life, and the question is, how do we create a daily motivation? You know, this thought that people would have in their mind of a healthy future is just, you can have it once in a while in your mind, but it's really, really hard to keep it going all the time, and we think this app would help.
You know, you have gone through some interesting health adventures yourself.
Yeah.
And you've had to undergo some very painful experiences. Perhaps very quickly you could explain to our listeners what happened to you and how you managed to get through some of those challenges, especially how videos helped you at one point.
Yeah. So I was badly burned a long time ago, about 70% of my body. I was in hospital for about 3 years. Lots of, I have a very rich medical history, a very thick file. But the thing that is the relevant for now is this. I had to take a very difficult medication called interferon. It was an interferon-ribavirin combination. Side effects are terrible: vomiting, headache, shaking. And I took it 3 times a week for a year and a half. And you know, me and all the other patients should have been motivated by not killing ourselves, later on. We should have taken this medication. The problem is, because it's a medication that is so unpleasant now for the future, lack of people just don't take it. And what I did was I made a deal with myself. And I said that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which were injection days, I would first thing in the morning I would get some videos I really wanted to watch. This was the period there were still video stores. And then when I came home, I would put the video in, I would inject myself, and I would press play. I basically rewarded myself at the day scale, right? I didn't say, oh my goodness, let me take those things. In 30 years, I will not die from liver cirrhosis. I said, no, I need a reward now. And I think it's a very general lesson that there's lots of things in life that we need to act for our long-term well-being. We're just not designed for that. And we need to create rewards that are more on a daily level. Otherwise, it's just not going to motivate us.
And this is how the app might work. So we'll be very interested to see about the results of this study. I'm interested.
No, I will tell you one thing.
Yeah.
If you want a special version to get Joe to be motivated for some specific thing, we can talk about this, right? So we can talk.
I love this idea.
And it would be an immediate motivator, because if you take away my email, I feel lost. If you take away my Facebook, I'm going to head right to the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to get that app back.
That's right. We're adding now a forgiveness module where you have some get out of jail free cards, where you can ask the app for forgiveness. And I know I messed up today. I promise to be better tomorrow, and we'll see. We'll see how that works as well.
Well, I'm interested in your ritual coffee.
Yes.
How do you use coffee as part of your motivation?
Yep. So, lots of things happen throughout the day, and rituals are very important. Now, what we find is that lots of people show up in the office and start doing email. And the hours when we show up in the office are some of our most productive hours of the day, right? On average, people are productive kind of for 2 hours a day, usually between 8:30 and 11 or something like that.
Before their coffee break.
Before the coffee break. These are kind of sacred hours. It's hours we should really work on things that are important. And I want to make sure that those hours I do something useful rather than open email and then have a Facebook link and, kind of life tries to tempt you and drag you along. So what I do is when I come to the office, I make myself an espresso and I drink a few coffees during the day. But this one is special. I listen to the grinding. The office is usually empty. I listen to the grinding of the beans. I look at how the coffee drips into my cup. I take it to the office, and then what I do is I open something on the computer that is important for me to work on today. So I don't do email and so on. I open something that I really want to get some progress on today. Maybe it's writing something, maybe it's some statistical analysis. It's mostly working on some writing project, a paper, a book. And then I basically just focus on that while drinking my coffee. I look at the cup, I smell it. I pay much more attention to all the nuances and details of this ritual. And it's not just the ritual of the coffee itself. I also link it to something productive that I want to do. And it basically becomes kind of a sacred time for me, a time I look forward to it. You know, most of the time, if you have like a daunting writing task, you come to it and say, I have to work on this. Now I basically take something that I love and I connect to it, and it's ritualistic. And even though, you know, writing sometimes it's complex, it does make the whole thing something I look forward to, which is important. You know, we think about rituals and habits. Habits are things that we do without thinking very much. Rituals are things that we can actually think more about, pay more attention, enjoy, and look forward to.
Well, as you're describing the way you listen to the machine grinding the beans, and of course there's an aroma there as well, and you watch it dripping, and you really pay attention to this coffee in your cup and how it smells and how it tastes. You're describing a mindfulness ritual, and I'm assuming that mindfulness is also spilling over into the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. We have another little group in the lab here. It's called The Fabulous. It's a French group that came to join us for a couple of years, and they're working on ritualizing all kinds of things in health. And we did an experiment with them, with 15,000 people, when we tried to ritualize exercising.
Okay.
We say, think about exercising. You get dressed, you put your shoes on, you go for a run. The first few minutes are the most miserable part of the experience. After you get into the stride, it becomes a little bit less miserable, but in the beginning, it's like a wall of misery. So we said, let's make the exercise more fun. Let's see if we could use rituals to make it more fun. And let's make the fun part putting your shoes on. Because we said if you put your shoes on, you'll probably go for a run. So what we did was we created a ritual of mindfulness ritual around tying your shoes. As people were tying the shoes, we asked them to say, with this, I'm taking care of my mind and body, and thinking about the connection between this activity and the overall meaning of health, and so on. And we basically increased exercise by about once a week for a large group of people. So I think, you know, if you think about rituals, it's about getting people to pay attention to something. Think about, taking your recycling out. If you think it's just recycling out and you just say, hey, should I do it, should I not, it's cold outside and so on, you think about it every day whether you should do it or not. If you think it's part of your definition of being a good person, you have a higher order meaning to it. Plus, you stay extra focused on it. You derive more joy from the activity itself, and you think of yourself as a person who recycles or person who exercises and so on. And I think we need to bring more of it in. You know, medicine, sorry about this, one last thing. I think that one of the differences between traditional medicine and some of the homeopathic and all of kind of those natural medication is traditional medicine basically takes the person out of consideration. I think if physicians could, they would give you pills you would not even know that you took, that you didn't think about it. Whereas some of the natural medication, they get you to stir things, they get you to pay attention, you drink it with hot water. I mean, they do all kinds of things that create rituals around. It's not the mindless taking of medication.
You're listening to Dr. Dan Ariely. He has written a wonderful new book called Payoff, The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. We welcome your calls and questions. Our number, 888-472-3366. How do you motivate yourself or your children or your employees? We'd love to hear your story. You can also ask Ariely a question. By the way, that's also his blog, and you can find him on the Wall Street Journal. You can find him all over the place. Dr. Dan Ariely has become a superstar in the field of behavioral economics and psychology.
Joe, we've got an email from Mike who says, I've always been very motivated when people tell me you'll never be able to do that or you're setting yourself up to fail. I need to prove them wrong. How about that for a motivation, Dan?
Yeah, it's a great motivation. And it has two things. at the same time. First of all, it's a public motivation rather than private. And this is a general lesson. It's not just about other people telling you can't achieve something, but having some kind of public commitment is incredibly important. You know, when Weight Watchers tried to move from a physical weighing of people in front of other people to weighing people online, a lot of their success went away, because part of it was the group motivation, how we're motivated by other people. And it's not just about competition. It's about the fact that we actually care about other people. We did a study a long time ago. We tried to get people to go for walks. And one of the things that worked best was to meet a friend at a street corner and go for a walk. You know, you might not care about your own health, but you would care about standing somebody up. So the way that other people play in our motivation is incredibly important. So every time you can make a public commitment to other people, you could do something with other people, you can show other people your progress. Those things are incredible commitment. And then the other thing that is part of this particular question, Mike's question, is that they're giving him a target. And a target is really good as well. Mm-hmm. Like, think about if we didn't have this idea of a marathon, would anybody run, that distance? Probably not. But we have this distance, and it's a goal, it's a target. And the moment you have a target, it has its own meaning, right? So think about something like climbing a mountain. If you went up on a mountain and you knew the top was closed for some reason, you wouldn't feel like doing it. But in this case, it's about other people. He gets to build his reputation. He has a particular target. So it's a very rich, incentive-rich setup to tell him he can't do something. So, Mike, and I think you should spread the joy as well and tell other people all kinds of things they can't do.
We have just a moment before we go to the break, but this idea of a scale that doesn't actually tell you what you weigh, 30 seconds.
Here's the things we know about weighing. It's good to step on the scale in the morning. It's better than in the evening because you commit to health. We also know that this number is frightening. People hate it. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. When it goes up, we hate it. When it goes down, we're slightly happy. On average, we're miserable, so we stop weighing ourselves. A scale with no display gets us to stand on the scale and actually care more about our weight.
But what about feedback?
Okay. I need more than 30 seconds.
When we come back after the break,
when we come back,
we'll find out what you learned from your scale. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about internal versus external motivation.
And we'll delve into something kind of philosophical. Does a sense of our own mortality affect our motivation?
We invite you to join our conversation. Our lines are open at 888-472-3366. If the lines are full, you can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. Again, the phone number, 888-472-3366.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon. If you're enjoying this People's Pharmacy podcast, why not head over to our website? Well, you'll find a wealth of information on medications, conditions, home remedies, and ways to keep yourself healthy. You'll find it all at peoplespharmacy.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Red X Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions helping dry, cracked skin feel utterly soft and smooth. The number is 800-345-7339. The website is uttercream.com.
And if you'd like to purchase a CD of this show, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is 1072, or find it online at peoplespharmacy.com.
Today we're talking about the complex topic of human motivation. Our guest is Dr. Dan Ariely, the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. He's a founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight. He's the author of books, a number of books, Predictably Irrational, the upside of irrationality, and the honest truth about dishonesty. His latest book is Payoff, the hidden logic that shapes our motivation. You can send him questions with Twitter, and you can send us questions with Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy.
Right now, however, you can ask Dr. Dan anything you ever wanted to know about motivation, or tell us your secrets. What gets you going? How do you keep working on a long-term project? You can reach us at 888-472-3366, or you can email us if our lines are full. We're radio@peoplespharmacy.com. That number again, 888-472-3366. We're going to go to Sally in Binghamton, New York in a moment. But first, Dan, what's this thing about a scale that doesn't tell you what you weigh?
Okay. So here's again kind of the three main facts about weight loss as I understand them. The first one is that standing on a scale is for measurement, but also commitment to weight. If you stand on a scale in the morning, you remind yourself that you care about your weight and you eat a little bit less throughout the day.
Hopefully.
No, empirically. People do it a little bit. It's kind of a reminder, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a little ceremony. The second thing is weight fluctuates a lot. Weight can fluctuate 3 pounds a day, and you try to lose 2 pounds a month, let's say. So the ratio of noise to signal is very high.
Mm-hmm.
And we have this thing called loss aversion. Loss aversion is the idea that negative events loom much larger than positive events. So if you step on a scale and you gain a pound, it's really miserable.
I know. It happens to me quite frequently.
And you stand on a scale, you lose a pound, it's happy, but it's not proportional. You're more miserable on the days that you gain weight.
Absolutely true.
And what happens? People stop weighing themselves.
It's true. I do that too.
So the last thing that we know is that people have a wrong model of how weight works. So people think that if they have a crazy weekend with 7,000 extra calories, right, they went to the state fair or something, they expect the weight gain to come very early, maybe on Monday already. Nature doesn't work like this. So what happened is the scale is very confusing. You have a good day with only salad and you went for a walk and you gain weight. You have a cheesecake day and you lose weight. So we said, look, what's happening is the granularity is not correct. So what we said, okay, let's separate stepping on a scale. And when people step on a scale, we say, congratulations, you've done what you're supposed to do. And then let's report their weight on an app on a 5-point scale. So let's first of all celebrate when people haven't increased their weight. So if you're within one standard deviation, like your weight fluctuates we said, well, you're just the same. Congratulations. And then we have slightly better, slightly worse, much better, much worse. And now with this running average of 3 weeks, you're not experiencing this cheesecake day and you lost weight and so on. On top of that, if you're a woman and you're on your menstrual cycle, you might gain weight. Do you really want to tell you that you've gained weight? No, not at all, because it's not, you see, what people care about is not the weight. We care about it as a proxy for health. And, in lots of things in healthcare, as we move to digital scales, we give people numbers with higher and higher precision, but it's actually less and less meaningful. So this morning, I let's say on the regular scale, maybe I was 158.2. Like, really? If I went from 1.58.4 yesterday, what does it really mean? But it's very hard to see these decimals and not to give them meaning, even though it's nothing. It's just, I peed a little bit less, so I had a tiny bit more sugar. So the goal is to separate the measurement from the outcome and to give people numbers that are actually compatible with our ability to make decisions.
Brilliant. I want one of those scales. Let's go to the phones. We go to Sally in Binghamton, New York. Thank you for being so patient, Sally. What is your comment, please?
Dr. Ariely, thank you for taking my call. I found your information very interesting. I do life coaching and dissertation coaching, so a lot of what you're talking about is with motivation is really important. One of the things that I look at is change, and how motivated people are to actually change. And you've talked about so many wonderful things. I'm curious what you think about Prochaska's stages of change, the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, and maintenance, and how that fits into what you're talking about.
Yeah, so, I'm kind of a basic guy. So, behavioral economics is a field that mostly look at how the environment changes our decision. And, I think, yes, there is a stage in which people think about whether they want to change, they decide they want to make the change. But the moment we want to make a change, actually, it's less about our internal mental state, and it's more about the way in which the environment helps us to create one change over another. So, if you think about the story I told about how movies help motivate people, if you think about how you create your calendar, one of the things that we find, for example, is the most helpful is just organize things in your calendar in a different way. If you want to do something, if it's not in the calendar, you'll not do it. I'll give you one study as an example. In this study, half the people were given information about the importance of vaccination for the flu. And they on this lecture, and at the end of the day, 3% of the people showed up to get the vaccination. Another group got the same exact lecture, but at the end of the lecture, before they left, they said, please take your calendar out and mark down which day you're going to go to get the vaccination. And by the way, here's a map for where the infirmary is. And the infirmary was not hidden, like everybody knew where it is. Now 26% of the people showed up. It's good to get these early stages of getting people to have an intention, but then we need to move to execution. And what we need to do in terms of motivation is to figure out how do we help people bridge that gap between intention to action. Is it about putting things on your calendar? Is it about making public commitment? Is it about getting something to do first thing in the morning as a priority? So these environmental changes are incredibly important. We need to figure out how do we get the things that we want to do, the things that are top of our priority, not things we need to keep on pushing ourselves to do.
Let's go to Dallas, Texas. Sally, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. You have a question that I think a lot of our listeners share. It has to do with money?
Yes, so I was just wondering what does money play into this? Because I guess I've noticed that if I get a gym membership and I pay for it, I'm much more likely to go and stick to it than if I haven't paid anything and I'm just doing it on my own.
Yes, so first of all, the results on that are a little sad. First of all, I'm happy this is working for you. But on average, the results show that when people pay a lot of money for the gym in the beginning of the year, they go in the beginning and then they stop. One of the things is that paying money makes us guilty, right? And you get a gym membership and you say, oh my goodness, let me pay lots of money for this gym and then I'll feel guilty and then it will make me go. Well, it turns out the guilt is short-lived. It doesn't last much after February. And then people go again if the credit card is being charged continuously. So paying in advance is a good thing, but the guilt goes down. One of the best way to get yourself to go to the gym is to pay for personal trainers. And think about this, like this whole industry of personal trainers, how much would it survive if you could cancel that day in the morning, right? You basically pay to go once a week and to meet a trainer or for them to, scream at you and tell you what to do, and this will motivate you at the moment. If you could cancel at the moment, in the morning, most people would cancel. But because we can't cancel and we have to pay anyway, this guilt, stinginess, basically causes us to go. So we need to create some mechanisms like that. Meeting friends in the gym is very helpful. Making a meeting with a trainer is very good. But this guilt of paying one time to the gym, for most people, it is not strong enough. And the results show that people on average pay $800 more a year compared to if they paid and every time they went to the gym.
Sally, thank you for your call. We're glad it's working for you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. There are a lot of employers who think money is the great motivator.
Well, in fact, we have an email question. Where can you find tools to use to motivate employees to do their share of the work instead of trying to do as little as possible? This person has emailed us 3 times, so this is a very burning question.
So this person is highly motivated. Yeah, so I think that lots of workplaces are actually demotivating people. And when we look at the motivation that person, when they look at their workplace, they should first of all ask themselves, what are they doing to demotivate people? And we talked about the cubicle culture. But, when we do things, people have everybody's looking for motivation. Like nobody wants to go to work and be miserable. But the things that get us to be happy are the things that say that we have some autonomy and some freedom and we get to express ourselves and we get to work with people. But often what we do is we take those things away in the name of efficiency and the name of bureaucracy and procedures, we're basically treating people like little robots. And under those conditions, we're then surprised that they're not interested in working very hard. Think about, for example, what we've done in the No Child Left Behind policy. We've taken teachers who basically joined this profession because they care, they want to educate, they have a vision of the country, the next generation, and so on. And we said to them, no. There's a test at the end of the year, and we'll only judge you based on that test. Like, not anything you think about what education is. There's just this test. And by the way, if your kids will do very well on this test, you'll get $400 extra a year. And what has happened? Most of the teachers said, you know what, I just don't care so much. So in motivation at the workplace, I think we first need to look at the things that we are doing unintentionally to decrease motivation, and then we should think about what are the things we could do to increase motivation.
You tell a story in Payoff about a group of engineers. You went to speak with them, and they told you their story. What had happened to them?
Yeah, so this was a group that was working for 2 years on a new project. They were working for something incredibly innovative and important for that group. And the week before I showed up, the CEO of that company shows up, and he said, stop working on this project. I want you to work on something else. And they were just devastated. For 2 years, they were working on something. And he said, I don't see a future in this. Go somewhere else. And they showed up late. They went home early. They did they were just not there. And he basically kind of pulled the rug underneath their feet. All of a sudden, they were passionate about something. Their whole lives were around the meaning of the thing that they were working on. And all of a sudden, he took it away from them. And I asked him, what could the CEO do to keep you motivated and cancel the project? Let's just not doubt whether the project had to be canceled. And they came up with all kinds of ideas. They said he could have asked him to give a lecture to the whole company about their journey over the last 2 years. He could have asked him to take some of the technologies they were developing and to think about what other things it could fit in the company. He could ask them to create some prototype and let it run in the company. He could have done all kinds of things. Now, all of them would take some time and effort. Even a lecture would mean prepare for it, show the whole company, and so on. But that CEO did not understand the motivation of these individuals. He did not understand that their definition of themselves was about that project, and they were putting their heart and sweat into this. And when he took it away, he basically said, you are just cogs. Like, you think that you are creating this thing. No, you're just working for me. I'm telling you exactly what to do. He took every autonomy out of what they were doing, any meaning of that project. And I think he didn't appreciate how much this was doing. And by the way, all the good people in that group left.
I've got a quick question because we're running out of time, and I want to know how to motivate myself, when it's like a mundane task or something we do over and over and over again. And you tell the story about asking a Broadway actor how he could get up for each performance week after week, month after month, year after year. If it was a successful production, you're a professor at Duke University. You have to give the same lecture every year. How do you motivate yourself, and what did you learn from that Broadway actor?
Yeah, he was actually very insightful. And what Daniel told me was that he created another higher order level in which he was monitoring himself. And, we are highly motivated toward improvement. And every time we improve, we find great joy in it. Think about playing an instrument or a sport or something. It's about the rate of improvement that you enjoy. So he basically said, you know what? I'm going to experiment. I'm going to play with pauses. I'm going to play with stands. When I give lectures, I try different jokes. I try different ways to explain the same thing. And I monitor myself. And it's not just that I try it. I say, okay, let me think. Is this better? And I get to both play and exercise with myself. Like, I keep myself interested by saying, okay, let me try to explain this concept a little different. Let me try and give people a chance to think here. Let me ask a question here. And the whole thing becomes more interesting because I keep on learning. I keep on exploring what is going on. And the same thing is true for any kind of work, right? If you basically say, let's try it differently. Actually, let's take this show. Imagine that the two of you are going to try and do something different. And you would say, you know what? Let me try and trip Terry up. Let me just see if I can get her to stumble or to surprise her or have an internal joke. And
I have an idea. We could do the show naked. That would be pretty exciting.
There you go. We can try.
I don't think that's going to fly.
Well, I do have a final question, and that is, does our sense of our own mortality affect our motivation?
Yeah. Mortality is a wonderful test case, because if you think that you're going to die and when you die it's over, or even if you think reincarnation, but your own physical thing is over, why would you care about death? But people care a lot. People think about what they want other people's impressions to be about it. And what's really funny is how much people try to settle scores in wills. There's one guy in particular that his wife gave him hell all those years for smoking cigars. And in his will, he said that his wife gets money every year only if she smokes a cigar on his birthday. So we do care, but it tells us something, I think, very deep about how much we care even when we're alive. Because if we care after we die, of course we care about a lot of things when we're still alive.
So, Dr. Dan Ariely, motivation, it's crucial to just about everything we do.
It's crucial and it's fascinating, and we need to tap more of it. We need to really think about all the things that motivate us and say, which are the areas of motivation, caring about others, caring about completion, daily challenges and so on. Which are the ones that we're not tapping, and how do we incorporate more of those into our lives? How? Because at the end of the day, we will be both more productive and happier if we could tap this incredible energy.
And ultimately, motivation is all about meaning.
A lot of it is about meaning, helping other people, achieving something.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thanks to our wonderful guest, Dr. Dan Ariely. He's the James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University and founding member of the Center for Advanced Hindsight. His latest, greatest book is Payoff, The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. And Ariely is spelled Ariely.
And his website is danariely.com. Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Sophie Copeland provided technical assistance. We had help today from Key Money Hall. Al Wadarsky is the engineer. Dave Graydon edits our interviews.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's Pharmacy theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
When you go to the website, peoplespharmacy.com, you can tell us what you think about today's show or find information on prescription drugs, herbs, and home remedies.
You could subscribe to the free podcast of our show or our free email newsletter. And if you want to order a CD of today's show, the number to call, 800-732-2334. It's show number 1072.
Again, the book we've been talking about is Payoff, The Hidden Logic That Shapes Our Motivations. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Joe Graydon in Durham, North Carolina.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, please consider taking a minute to write a review on iTunes. And thanks for listening to The People's Pharmacy.